Have you ever wondered in the middle of the night, why is there a popular saying that we only use 10% of our brain? Is this true or just a widespread myth? Welcome to Midnight Reflections, where curiosity never sleeps. Now let's find out. Where curiosity never sleeps. The human brain has the ability to perform millions of daily tasks. No matter how complex or difficult, it can compose musical pieces, produce statements and ideas, solve brilliant mathematical equations, and serve as the main storage for memory. Yet despite all these functions, we often hear about hidden abilities inside the brain that we can't access. The reason, according to the myth, is that the average human only uses 10% of their brain. Meanwhile, geniuses and great thinkers supposedly became who they are because they use a higher percentage. And the more you use, the more abilities you unlock. Some even claimed that if someone could use more than 10% of their brain, they could move objects with their mind or turn their memory into a digital-like storage, recalling the tiniest details, even numbers with 1,000 digits. According to this idea, your problem is that you sadly only use 10% of your brain. But if you could tap into the remaining 90%, you would transform from an ordinary person into something almost mythical. But where did this claim come from? How true is it? And what does science actually say about the 10% brain theory? Has anyone ever truly broken that so-called barrier? The idea that humans only use 10% of their brain has been mentioned multiple times in documentaries and even in movies. One famous story told of a failed writer, a man who could never achieve success, until one day he met someone who offered him an experimental drug. He thought it was just another narcotic, but the effect was shockingly different. The drug altered his brain's structure, maximizing his intelligence to the highest possible level. Suddenly, he was achieving incredible success, so much so that he eventually ran for president. This story, and many others, strongly built on the idea that humanity has achieved all of its discoveries and scientific progress while using only 10% of the brain's power. So the big question became, what would happen if we could use 100%? In reality, the 10% of the brain theory is not just a creation of documentaries and science fiction. It's actually an old, controversial hypothesis that once circulated within the scientific community. But here's the important part. There is absolutely no scientific evidence to support it. To scientists and researchers, it remains nothing more than a myth. The idea was based on the belief that large portions of the brain are unused, and that one day, in some way, humans might activate these areas, turning themselves into geniuses simply by unlocking the remaining 90%. The roots of this myth trace back to the late 19th and early 20th centuries. A group of psychologists at Harvard University, led by philosopher and psychologist William James, conducted experiments to test intelligence in children. After studying around 300 kids, Dr. Williams stated that humans rarely reach their full potential. What he actually meant was simple. For example, a child might have the ability to memorize 100 equations, but often chooses to memorize only one or two. His point was not about unused brain areas, but rather about human laziness and lack of effort. His statement was entirely logical. He never said anything about 10%. But in 1936, the scientific community was surprised by a book published by American writer Lowell Thomas. In it, he claimed, while quoting a Harvard professor, that humans use only 10% of their mental abilities. The problem? Dr. William never said that. The writer twisted his words, added a percentage from thin air, and spread the myth. For some reason, books kept repeating this false idea, with no logical basis. But if you've lived through the YouTube era, you already know the real reason: attention. The same way people today make clickbait videos and viral Facebook posts, writers back then used shocking claims to sell more books. Soon, self-help and motivational books started spreading titles like, "There are no limits to what the human brain can do," or Scientists tell us we only use 10% of our brains. And so, the idea kept spreading through society, even though it was false from the very beginning. In reality, it was nothing more than a marketing tool, just another way to sell motivational content, much like the endless self-development gurus still making money today. And what fueled the fire even more is that some people misuse the observations of researchers. Scientists admitted that they had not yet reached a complete understanding of the human brain. They had only managed to study about 10% of it in detail, while research on the remaining 90% was still ongoing. Although the original statement was clear, it was simply about doctors and researchers trying to study the brain's functions. This was twisted and misinterpreted to promote the 10% myth. Later, false claims even appeared, saying that Albert Einstein himself had spoken about the 10% brain theory and that his genius was due to using more than 10%. But the truth is, there's absolutely no evidence that Einstein ever said such a thing. Sadly, with all these factors combined, the myth spread widely, so much so that even today, there are still people who believe it. But is there a scientific response that completely disproves the 10% theory? The answer is yes, many responses in fact. Modern brain imaging technologies such as positron emission tomography, PET scans, and magnetic resonance imaging, MRI scans, have proven beyond any doubt that no part of the brain is inactive or unused. Humans use 100% of their brain, all day, every day. Even during sleep, the brain remains active. Scientific studies show that every single region of the brain has a specialized function, processing a certain type of information. In fact, scientists have even mapped out the brain, assigning tasks and functions to each area. Now, it's true that we don't use every part of the brain all at once for a single task. For example, when you're solving a very complex equation or planning an elaborate project, you'll be activating most of your brain's regions. But when you're doing something simple, like eating or drinking, you'll only be engaging smaller areas. In total, however, you are always using 100% of your brain. The level of activity just varies depending on the task. Think about it. If there were parts of the brain that were truly unused or unnecessary, then an injury to those parts wouldn't affect someone's life at all. But in reality, even the smallest brain injury can have serious consequences. Have you ever heard a doctor say, "Good news, everyone"? The injury destroyed part of the useless 90%, but the important 10% is safe? Of course not. And there's another fact. Brain cells, or neurons, naturally degenerate and die if they are not used. Since the human brain is entirely made of neurons, if 90% of it were unused, autopsies would reveal massive amounts of dead, decayed brain tissue. But that has never been the case. So the logical question we should ask is, what actually makes some people excel and achieve greatness in life, while others don't? The answer lies in perseverance. Genius, according to great thinkers, is about 1% inspiration and 99% hard work, effort, and persistence. The people who promote myths like the 10% brain theory are often those who don't want to work hard. They want to believe that others became more successful simply because of some miracle or hidden gift. But the reality is, if you sit still, never learn new skills, and never push yourself, you won't achieve anything. In the end, there is one thing you can do that uses less than 1% of your brain power, and it requires almost no effort at all. Hit that like button, subscribe, and share. Now you know. Got more midnight questions? Drop them in the comments. Stay curious, and I'll see you in another Midnight Mystery.